All right, so welcome to this deep dive, and we're all about something super cool today, helping you guys move past that like intermediate plateau in English, when you've got all that like grammar down, you can read, you can write.
Hmm.
But speaking, oh, that's where it gets kind of tricky.
It is. It is. Yeah. Yeah. It's so common.
You want to sound natural,
Right.
confident, like you've
Right.
been speaking English your whole life.
Exactly. And a lot of learners hit that point, right? They feel kind of stuck, like they're speaking textbook English,
Yeah.
but not like the real flowing language that you hear like
Mhm.
native speakers using.
Yeah,
And that's what we want to kind of like unlock today.
that's it. That's it. So to kind of get us started, we've got this awesome article from Preply, How to Speak English Fluently.
Mhm.
14 powerful tips and tricks. And it jumps right into it, doesn't it? The most important thing,
It does.
practice.
Yeah.
It really emphasizes over and over again that there's no substitute for it, actually speaking the language.
And the interesting thing is they acknowledge that sometimes it can be a bit of a challenge to find those opportunities to practice, especially if you're not living in like an English-speaking country.
Yeah.
But they really push you to think outside the box.
Yeah.
They even suggest narrating your daily activities in English,
Yeah.
which might sound a little strange at first.
It does. But I actually remember hearing about a polyglot who did this.
Oh, really?
He would walk around his house and just describe everything he was doing
Wow.
in the language he was learning. It was
Right.
like turning his everyday life into this like language immersion course,
Yeah. It's about getting those like mental reps in,
Right.
making English part of your internal monologue.
Yes.
And that kind of leads us to another point that they really emphasize. The value of one-on-one tutoring.
Yeah.
They even cite a study, right, showing that students who had that kind of personalized instruction made like way more progress than those in just the traditional classroom settings.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
A tutor can really focus in on your weaknesses,
Mm.
give you that tailored feedback,
Mm.
push you in a way that a generic app or course just can't.
Exactly. And honestly, textbooks can be a bit dry, right?
Yeah.
A tutor brings that human element to learning.
Yeah, they do.
They can explain things in a way that makes sense to you. Use examples that resonate with your interests and even like keep you motivated when you hit those bumps in the road because you know you will.
Oh, you do?
And they also talk about how tutors can help you build confidence, which is like huge when it comes to speaking because it's so easy to like clam up when you're worried about making mistakes.
Yeah.
But a tutor can create that like safe space to practice
Yeah.
and get comfortable with that kind of messy process of learning, right?
Cool.
Like having a coach,
Right.
someone in your corner who believes in you and helps you push past those fears.
I love that.
Now, another big idea that they highlight, the importance of daily immersion.
Mm.
So changing your phone settings to English, right? Watching movies with English subtitles. Basically just like surrounding yourself with the language as much as possible. That's the key.
I've tried those things too. They definitely help. But they go even further in the article. They suggest things like attending online events in English or joining online communities that are related to your hobbies.
Yeah.
So it's really about actively seeking out those authentic experiences,
Right.
even if you can't like physically be in an English-speaking environment.
What's so cool here is it's about integrating English into your life in a way that feels natural,
Yeah.
and enjoyable, not forced. So instead of it being a chore, you're seeing it as this way to connect with people, to
Well,
explore new interests, to like expand your world.
Yeah, I love that. So it's about making English a part of who you are, not just something you study.
Yes.
And this next point I thought was so interesting, learning whole phrases instead of like isolated words.
Oh, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
Because, native speakers don't think in individual words, do they? We use those chunks of language.
Right.
Those like prefabricated phrases that just flow so naturally.
Hmm.
And the article calls this sentence mining. So you're actively seeking out and like internalizing these common phrases so you can use them without even thinking about it in conversation.
It gives a great example. Instead of just learning the word tired,
Yeah.
you learn the phrase, I'm dead tired.
Right. Exactly.
It's so much more expressive, and it just helps you sound so much more natural,
Totally.
less robotic.
It's about moving beyond that literal translation and embracing the way that, native speakers actually express themselves.
Yes.
And this ties into another point they make about the importance of idioms,
Yes.
which can be tricky.
Oh, those are so tricky.
They can throw you off.
Yes. I remember the first time I heard to spill the beans.
Oh, yeah?
I was like, what? What are you talking about?
Like, what beans? What are you
Yeah,
spelling?
where are these beans?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and they're so crucial for sounding natural, right?
They are.
And understanding all those nuances of the language.
And their article emphasizes it's not about memorizing lists of idioms.
Oh,
it's about paying attention to how native speakers use them in context.
yeah.
So in movies, in TV shows, in conversations, and don't be afraid to ask questions. If you hear one that you're not sure about, ask. That's how you start to internalize those meanings, those subtle meanings.
Yes.
And use them correctly.
Totally. Now they have a whole section on getting comfortable with feeling uncomfortable.
Ooh, that's good.
Which I think is so important. Because, let's face it,
It's true.
speaking another language can be terrifying.
It is.
It
So
can.
You're putting yourself out there, right?
Yeah, you're risking making mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so easy to let that fear just hold you back.
Totally. And that's where the article is brilliant, because it reframes that discomfort
Yeah.
as this, like, necessary part of the process.
Yeah.
It's about developing what they call tolerance for ambiguity.
I love that.
It's that ability to kind of embrace those moments of uncertainty
Yeah.
and push through them.
It's so true. It's so true. Because it's in those moments when you're struggling to find the right words or make yourself understood.
Yes.
That's when you actually learn the most.
Exactly. It's like anything else worth achieving,
Yeah.
right? You have to be willing to push past your comfort zone,
Yes.
to make those mistakes, to stumble and get back up again.
Absolutely.
That's how you grow.
Yeah.
That's how you develop true fluency.
It's not just about mastering all the grammar and vocabulary. It's about, like, developing a certain mindset.
Totally.
This willingness to embrace the messiness of, like, real-life communication.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
It's about shifting from that perfectionistic approach to a more experimental one.
Yeah.
Where you're not afraid to, like, try things out, to play with the language, to have fun with it.
Yes. And that leads to their final point, which I think is really intriguing.
Let's hear it. So they're suggesting, like, some pretty big lifestyle changes.
Yeah.
Like moving to an English-speaking country or finding a job that requires you to use English all the time.
I know. Those are big.
Yeah, those are commitments for sure. But I do appreciate that they also offer some smaller steps you can take,
Yeah.
like finding an English-speaking roommate or hosting travelers through, like, a home-sharing platform.
Yeah.
It all comes back to that idea of creating that immersive environment,
Yeah.
you know, finding ways to weave English into the fabric of your daily life, even if you're not living in an English-speaking country.
And one thing that really stood out to me was their emphasis on not getting bogged down by grammar rules.
Oh, that's a good one.
You know, I know I've definitely been guilty of that in the past.
Yeah.
Overthinking every sentence, and I just end up sounding like a robot.
It's so common, though, isn't it? Especially for learners who come from very, like, grammar-focused educational systems. But they make a great point, you know, even native speakers break grammar rules all the time in everyday conversation.
All the time.
It's about communication, not perfection.
Yeah.
I remember reading somewhere that fluency is essentially the ability to make mistakes confidently.
I love that.
Yeah, and that ties into their point about expanding your vocabulary,
Yeah.
which is essential for fluency, right? But they suggest a really interesting approach.
Okay.
It's not about memorizing lists of words.
No.
It's about learning new words in context through reading, listening, watching, like, authentic English content.
Right.
And that's where sentence mining comes in handy again.
Yeah.
When you encounter a new word or a new phrase that you like, write down the entire sentence that it's used in,
Well, that's good.
because that helps you not only remember the meaning,
Mm-hmm.
but also how to use it correctly grammatically.
Yeah. And they even suggest techniques like spaced repetition.
Yes.
So using flashcards or apps to review words at increasing intervals,
Yeah,
which helps you move those words from your short-term memory to your long-term memory.
exactly.
It's all about making them stick.
Yeah, make them stick.
Right. And actually be able to use them.
Yeah, integrate them into your active vocabulary.
Yes.
So you can use them effortlessly in conversation.
Now, the article also touches on something that I think a lot of learners struggle with: pronunciation.
It's a big one.
They emphasize the importance of not just understanding the sounds of English,
Right.
but actually training your mouth muscles to produce them correctly.
It's like learning any new physical skill, right?
Yeah.
You need to practice, you need to focus on the mechanics and
Yeah.
just gradually build up your accuracy and speed.
They suggest things like shadowing,
Ooh, shadowing, that's a good one.
which is basically mimicking native speakers as closely as possible.
Have you ever tried that?
I have. It's hard.
It is, but it's effective.
Yeah, it's really effective.
Yeah.
So you basically choose a short audio or video clip, something you enjoy listening to,
Okay.
and you try to repeat it simultaneously with the speaker.
Wow.
paying close attention to their intonation, their rhythm, their pronunciation.
Yeah, and it's not about sounding exactly like the speaker, right?
No.
Everyone has their own unique voice.
Mm,
It's about developing a clear, natural pronunciation that's easy for others to understand.
yeah. They also talk about the importance of listening, not just hearing.
I like that distinction.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about actively paying attention to the sounds of English,
Mm-hmm.
the way words are stressed,
The nuance.
the subtle nuances of intonation.
Yeah.
And they have some good suggestions for how to practice active listening. Things like listening to podcasts or audiobooks at slightly slower speeds,
Oh,
focusing on specific sounds or pronunciation patterns.
right.
You can even transcribe short audio clips to really tune into the details.
Yeah, that's good exercise.
Yeah. They also have a whole section on overcoming the fear of speaking,
I was going to say, we can't forget about that.
which I think is something that we've all experienced at some point, right?
Oh, absolutely.
In our language learning journey,
Mm.
it's totally normal to feel nervous or self-conscious when you're speaking a new language,
It is.
but they give some great advice on how to manage those feelings and build your confidence.
Okay, I like it.
They talk about the importance of setting realistic expectations,
Yeah,
not putting too much pressure on yourself to sound perfect right away.
right. You're not going to sound like a native speaker overnight.
No,
It takes time.
it takes time. And it's about embracing those mistakes as learning opportunities,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Focusing on progress, not perfection.
love it.
And they also suggest things like positive self-talk,
Oh, that's important.
right? Reminding yourself of how far you've come
Yeah,
and focusing on your strengths.
totally.
Oh.
And they also emphasize the importance of finding those supportive conversational partners.
Yeah.
People who will encourage you and make you feel comfortable practicing,
Yes,
even when you're stumbling over your word.
totally. It's about creating a safe and supportive environment
Mm-hmm.
where you can experiment with the language,
Yeah,
make mistakes,
yeah,
and learn from them.
I like it. Now, before we wrap up this part of the deep dive,
Okay.
I wanted to circle back to their point about technology,
Yes.
which can be such a powerful tool for language learning if used effectively.
There are so many apps and online resources out there these days.
I know, it's overwhelming.
It is overwhelming.
But they make a great point about finding a balance,
Yeah.
not relying too heavily on any one tool.
Right.
Apps can be great for vocabulary drills or like quick grammar refreshers,
Yeah.
but they can't replace the human element of actual conversation.
Totally.
Right.
Yeah.
It's about using technology to supplement your learning, not to replace those real-life interactions.
Yes. And they also highlight the incredible resource that is YouTube.
Oh, it's a goldmine
It is a goldmine.
for language learners.
It is. And one of the things I love about YouTube is that you can control the pace.
Yeah.
You can rewind, use subtitles. You can really tailor the experience to your needs.
Yeah,
It's like having a personalized language tutor on demand.
I like that. Now, I know we're just scratching the surface here,
Yeah.
but this PrepLay article has already given us so much to think about.
It has.
What are some of the key takeaways that you think are like most important for our listener?
I think for me, what really stands out is this idea that fluency isn't just about, mastering grammar and vocabulary.
Mm.
It's about developing a certain mindset,
Yes.
a willingness to embrace the messiness of real life communication.
It's such a crucial point.
Yeah.
It's about shifting from that perfectionistic approach to a more experimental one, where you're not afraid to try things out, to play with the language, to have fun with it.
Yeah. And that ties into another takeaway for me, the importance of finding your tribe, connecting with other English learners who are on the same journey.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's about sharing resources, tips, encouragement, celebrating each other's successes, and offering support when things get tough. Because, learning a new language can be challenging.
Oh, it can.
And there will be times when you feel frustrated or discouraged. And
Mm.
having those people who understand what you're going through can make all the difference.
Oh, yeah.
They can offer a fresh perspective, help you see your progress, and remind you why you started this journey in the first place.
I love that. And it doesn't have to be, a formal language exchange or a study group.
It doesn't.
It could be as simple as finding a few online communities or forums where other English learners are sharing their experiences and supporting each other.
Absolutely. It's about creating that space where you can practice without judgment, ask questions, and learn from each other's mistakes.
I love that. Now, before we wrap up, I did want to touch on one more thing that they really emphasize,
Okay, let's hear it.
the importance of consistency.
Ah, yes, the
It's
key.
probably the single most important factor in language learning success, right?
It is. It's not about cramming for hours on end.
Right.
It's about making English a part of your daily routine,
Hmm.
even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Yeah, they give the example of setting aside 15 minutes every morning to review vocabulary flashcards, or listening to an English podcast during your commute, or reading a few pages of an English book before bed.
Yeah, just find those little pockets of time in your day
Yes.
and use them intentionally to expose yourself to the language.
I love that. And it's amazing how even those small, consistent efforts
Yes.
can lead to significant progress over time.
They do. They really do.
So it's not about finding these huge chunks of time.
Mm.
It's about making those micro habits a part of your life.
Yeah.
And that's really empowering, I think, because it means that anyone can make progress towards fluency, no matter how busy they are.
Absolutely. And it goes back to that idea we were talking about earlier, the power of habit formation.
Yeah.
When you make English a regular part of your daily routine, it becomes less of a chore and more of an automatic behavior.
And as you build those habits, you start to see the results.
Yes.
You understand more. You speak more confidently. You start to think in English more naturally.
Yeah.
And that's where the real magic happens.
It is. It's reaching that point where English becomes a part of who you are, not just something that you're studying.
Yeah. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's the one message you want our listeners to take away today?
I think if you want to speak English like a native, stop thinking about it as a destination and start seeing it as a journey, a fascinating, challenging, and ultimately rewarding journey.
Yeah.
And remember, you don't have to do it alone. Find your tribe.
Yes.
Embrace the messiness and
It's-
celebrate every step along the way.
I love it. So well said. And remember, even those small, consistent actions